Hi there, and welcome to today's Property Management for Microsoft Dynamics GP webinar. My name is Jake O'Brien. I'm the Marketing Specialist at Binary Stream, and I'll be getting us started today. Today's webinar will take roughly 30 minutes, followed by some time for questions and answers at the end. Feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar using the questions box in GoToWebinar, and we'll address as many as we can at the end of the webinar. So just a quick overview of what will be covered today. We'll start off by introducing Neil McDonald, who will give an overview of the property management product. Then we're going to have a guest speaker, Brent Marsh with Wilmerite Management Group, tell us about his first-hand experiences using the product. Neil will then get into a demo, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Neil McDonald is our main speaker today, and he will be demoing the property management solution for you. Neil comes with over 30 years of business, project, and IT management experience, and he is a resident property management expert here at Binary Stream. Okay, Neil, you're up.
Thanks, Brett, or Jake, sorry about that. Appreciate it very much. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. So we're going to talk today about property management. We used to call it property site management, same application, probably one that the name that you've heard before. So what is property site manager or property management? It's a fully integrated Dynamics GP module that gives you the ability to manage comprehensive leases from a tenant standpoint or from a landlord standpoint. It gives you the ability to track your billing, be able to look in and drill in and see all the details of your lease, to forecast all your leasing activities into the future, and give you some great reporting with transparency and accuracy of all of your lease activities. Before we jump into the application, though, today I'd like to introduce Brent Marsh. Brent is the Director of Enterprise Solutions at Wilmerite Management Group. And Brent is a user of our products, as Wilmerite is. So, Brent, welcome to our webinar this morning. Really appreciate you taking some time to talk to us. Tell us a little bit about Wilmerite.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. So Wilmerite is this family-run company. It's been around for many decades, 7 decades or so, and they own a number of shopping centers in the Rochester, New York area, along with a couple of casino gaming resorts. We have more in development, and we've also done some work in student housing and mixed-use real estate.
Great. Sounds like a perfect match for Dynamics GP and property management. So, Brent, tell us, before Wilmerite was using Dynamics GP, before it was using Binary Stream's property management, what was the property management system that you were using, and what was it that made the company decide to leave that product and switch over to Dynamics GP and property management?
Sure. So our legacy accounting system was called CTI. And as far as I know, it's still in existence, and there's nothing disparaging to be said against it. But the version that we had was severely outdated. It was running on an AS400 that was 15 years or so old, and it was simply a good opportunity for us to move to a new platform. So that legacy system was also specific to the real estate industry, and since this company had other ventures, it was no longer a good fit for our overall strategy. So because of the possibility for other ventures, we didn't want an accounting package that was specific to the real estate industry. We wanted something that was more general purpose, but still had the industry-specific functionality. Now, much of the search was done prior to my coming on board, but we looked at a number of other options. Oracle and SAP were simply too large and too cost prohibitive. Other packages we looked at were too small or too limiting. Microsoft had other options too, like Nav, but GP was really a good fit for the size and the scope and especially the scalability for our company.
Okay, so that addressed the ERP package itself. Of course, then you needed something to manage your properties. Why was Binary Stream's Property Site Manager, as we call it at the time, why was that the product that was chosen?
Right. So, although we wanted that flexibility, our portfolio currently has, something on the order of 4 million square feet of retail space, right, in the form of super regional shopping centers, regional shopping centers, and strip centers. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of leases at any given time that need to be maintained, right, and each lease is different, right? There's rent, CAM, tax recoveries, utility charges, breakpoints, rent steps, adjustments for changes in CPI, they're all negotiated on a lease-by-lease basis. So the number of permutations, right, for the structure of each lease is essentially limitless. So we needed something.
Sounds daunting.
We needed it exactly is. It really is. So we needed a system that could handle that degree of flexibility and, still generate invoices that were accurate and reliable every time without fail and with, minimal user involvement. And Binary Stream's Property Manager does that for us, right? And the tight, seamless integration with GP was just a perfect fit.
Great. So I know you're also using some other Binary Stream products. One of them is Multi-Entity Manager, which obviously is designed to allow you to run multiple companies. In some cases, we've got customers as small as 2 or 3, up to literally hundreds of separate legal entities out of a single Dynamics GP database. Why was MEM so important to Wilburite?
Yeah, great question. So, the nature of our company is that virtually every venture that we embark on is a new partnership. Different investors or a different mix of investors, may own one shopping center while another group owns another group of, or another shopping center. So, for tax, legal, accounting requirements, they're all separate and distinct legal entities. So currently, we've got something on the order of 70 legal entities that we need to manage. And if we were to use strictly the native GP functionality, that would be, 70 company databases, which means our accountants would spend, just about as much time logging into and out of the different companies as they would, be doing their actual work. And when you
hear that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And when you factor into that, all the due tos and the due froms, just that would have to be managed, it's just simply not feasible. So the multi-entity management module allows us to keep just about all of our companies in a single GP database, and that just makes everything, infinitely more expedient, from generating invoices to processing payables to closing the books at month end. Or just the entire process is just a fraction of what it would be otherwise.
Great. So that takes care of property management, multi-entity manager. What other Binary Stream products are you currently using?
Well, certainly those are the two big ones, the property management and multi-entity management. But there is another one, and this really sort of ties into the responsiveness of Binary Stream. It's called Apply AR Payments by Line Item. That sounds like a mouthful, and I always trip up over that, but it'll really solve an issue for us. Again, unique to this industry. So while it's of course commonplace to submit, to your customers a single invoice that has multiple charges on it, in this industry, and as far as I know this is unique, our customers might pay only specific line items. So for an analogy, if you were to go shopping at, say JCPenney, and you bought a shirt, pants, and shoes, and you paid for it with your JCPenney credit card, at the end of the month when that bill arrives and you go to pay for it, you're not going to send JCPenney a check and say, well, I'm paying for the shirt in full, but I'm only paying for, 90% of the pants, and I'm only paying for one shoe.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen, would it?
Right. I mean, you could do that, but from JCPenney's perspective, they wouldn't record the transaction to that level of detail, right? They would just show that you short paid that month's invoice. And that's the crux of the issue that we face in this industry. It's important that we send out a single consolidated invoice to our customers each month, but because of the nature of the industry, they have the right to short pay some items that they're protesting. And, we might have to go through some sort of reconciliation over a specific charge category, at the end of at year end with that customer. So I know that's kind of a long explanation, but the point is that this is functionality that doesn't exist within GP. Right? You can only apply a payment at the invoice level. So your only other option is to set GP to generate one invoice per charge, meaning our customers would get a dozen or so invoices each month, or then we would have to find yet another third-party tool to consolidate those invoices, but that causes still other issues. So that's really one of the great things about working with Binary Stream is I brought this issue up with you, Neil. He went and consolidated or consulted with his teams, they recognize that this is a common complaint amongst their clients, and they set out to building a solution for us. So this apply AR payment by line item module allows us to still generate one consolidated invoice per month for our customers using GP's native functionality, and still, when we receive payments, we're able to apply the payment right at the individual charge level, which has really solved a huge issue for us.
Great. And one thing we have done, Brent, is we've actually simplified the name of the product a little bit. We now call it the SOP, Applied by Line, so it's actually just a little bit less of a mouthful. Still a pretty handy product, though. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so overall, before we jump into the demo of property management, which is really the purpose of the webinar today, give us some insight as to your experience working with Binary Stream, just on the whole.
Sure. Well, I think the story that I just told really exemplifies that. Not only does Binary Stream, turn out good products that fit our needs and are really tightly integrated with GP, but that they're also extremely responsive. The PSM, or the property management module, looks and acts the way it does today, in part because of direct feedback from us, and I'm sure from other clients as well. I'm out on the East Coast, and a couple of years ago I happened to be on vacation in Vancouver, and I'm ashamed to admit this, but I had some downtime on my vacation. I couldn't resist, and I checked my work email. And when the folks at Binary Stream learned that I was in the neighborhood, they invited me over for lunch. So I stopped over. I joined them. I got a tour of the office. I got to meet all of the developers and everyone there, and put a face to a name. And Locke, the CEO, pulled me into his office, and we chatted for a while. He was very attentive, as he's always been. The several times I've met him at Convergence, he's very diligent about his customer care and about following up on items. I simply don't have that kind of tight relationship with any of our other software vendors, and we use plugins from several other vendors for other purposes, and I just don't have that kind of relationship with anyone else.
Well, that's great. We appreciate that, Brent. And anytime you're in the Vancouver area, drop in again. We'll do lunch again as well. But we really appreciate the kind things you're saying. We really appreciate the business, and as you mentioned, some of the growth of property management has really come from feedback from our valuable customers, including yourself and your staff at Wilmerite. So with all of that said, let's jump in and have a look at the product itself. Obviously, the purpose of today was to talk about our property management product. And if it works for a company like Wilmerite, if you're looking at a property management system, thinking you need something that's unique to the industry, something that will handle your specific needs, let's jump in. Let's have a look and see what the software is capable of doing. So the first thing I want to point out, and Brent touched on it as well as I did at the beginning, is that it is a fully integrated Dynamics GP module. Over in the navigation pane here on the left-hand side, you can see all the modules. For example, the financial module, the sales module. These are modules that Microsoft has created. If we go and we drill into one of those, we get that familiar interface. Of course, we've got the setup area where we can change the defaults and so on. If I want to create a new master record, like a card or a customer, a national account, or a salesperson, I go up to the cards area. If I want to get some work done, I go up to transactions. I can do my sales transactions. I can do my cash receipts, posting my batches, and so on. I've got some routines and reports and inquiries, utilities. Every module that Microsoft creates looks like this. It's got the same basic layout, its own navigation screen. If I go to property management or property site management, as we used to call it, you notice it's got that same look and feel. It's developed in the same language as the rest of the Dynamics GP modules, so it gets that tight integration. As we go through the demo, we'll see there's areas where when we create records, we're creating, of course, the lease subledger because we're tracking those leases in our tables. But when we create invoices, we're talking to either the AR or the SOP module if you're working from the tenant lease perspective, or the AP module from the ground lease perspective. When we create expenses, of course, we're pushing those through to the leasing, but we're also looking at the various subledgers in GP as well. When a customer makes a cash payment, they're applying it against that invoice. It's talking to the cash module, which of course in turn backs up your bank rec module. when the customer pays a deposit. That, of course, updates the cash module, and all of these then in turn update your general ledger. So this is not a system that's kind of out there somewhere where I'm going to log into GP to do my accounting and then log into something else to manage my leases. The integration is there. It's tight. We've already looked after that for you. Just a couple features I wanted to highlight today in property management. There's a couple of really unique features that allow you to manage your properties from inside the accounting system. One of them is the fact that we can, from a single screen, create a lease. We're going to bring in all the master records that we would use to create a lease. So I'll just pull up a sample lease here. And we'll notice as we're looking at this, I've got my properties. So I've got my buildings, I've got my units in the building. There's a two-level hierarchy for the properties itself, and I've got my tenants. These are master records that can be created manually. Of course, you could import them in as well. We have an import utility built, a series of CSV files, and a utility to import those and load them into the system. I don't think we've ever sold the system to somebody who started a business today. Everybody's got properties. They're already using some other system, as Brent alluded to. So we've got to get those master records out of that system that you're using today and get them into Dynamics GP. From a tenant standpoint, this is just an out-of-the-box Dynamics GP customer, because when you sell this guy temporary use of your space, he's just a customer. No different than if he was buying a loaf of bread or a quart of milk from you. He's simply buying temporary use of your space. Therefore, it's a customer. We're using the same AR subledger to manage the invoices to this particular customer, or obviously we're calling him a tenant. If we were on the ground lease side, instead of having a tenant record here, we would have a landlord record here so that you can pay your leases on time, pay your rent on time to your landlord. The property itself, we give you a two-level hierarchy. Some of the options available here are the ability to track equipment, fixed assets. This might apply more in the residential space. And one thing I will point out, property management is not designed for a specific sector of the industry. It's very flexible. Now, our sweet spot really is the retail and commercial space. Companies like Wilmerite are really the sweet spot for the product, but we have a lot of residential customers as well. So when you're working in the residential space, it's not uncommon for the landlord to be carrying things like the fridge, stove, washer, dryer as fixed assets. Well, using the equipment record here, we can attach those fixed assets to the property so that you can run a report at the month end or year end, do a walkthrough and make sure that your stuff is where it's supposed to be, that nice stainless steel fridge that you put in didn't disappear in the night and get replaced by something else. It's where it's supposed to be. You've got an accurate record that this particular fixed asset is associated with this particular piece of property. We can track things like insurance and property taxes, simply define those elements in here, track the information. Well, what if there's more information that I want to track than Binary Stream has provided space for? We've got that covered too. We've got these user-defined fields, and it's actually 2 columns, 20 fields per column, where you can define whatever type of data you want to capture, and you can actually have different sets of user-defined fields for different types of properties or tenants and so on. So in this case, my user-defined field is tied to this commercial office. If this was a residential, there may be other information that I need to track. Now, every time that you build a lease, you're going to see that user-defined button 4 times. We're seeing it here on the property screen on the building. We'll see it again at the unit level. We're seeing it down here on the actual lease itself, and it was on the tenant record as well. So every time you build a lease, there's 160 user-defined fields. For those customers that are in the commercial to retail space that have to worry about things like common area maintenance charge, using the building expense area here, we have the ability to come in and define, for example, which GL accounts that I want to track the expenses for this particular piece of property. So I can lay out my GL accounts, one or many, and as I create my expenses and they hit these GL accounts, it's going to track the amounts. And when it tracks those, I can then use those in the CAM reconciliation. We'll see that toward the end of the demo, where I'm able to track and manage those expenses so I can do that reconciliation properly. One interesting feature here, in addition to working with Multi-Entity Manager, and that's this section right up at the top where this facility ID is located, that's the field that says that this particular lease belongs to a particular entity or company in my database. We're going to do some account substitution based on that. If you're using Multi-Entity Manager, you probably recognize the account substitution that it does. We're also doing it in property management. So I'm telling the system that my segment, in this case it's segment 3 of my chart of accounts, represents my building or my portfolio. It's saying that this particular building is number 10 in that segment. Now, where this becomes interesting is when I add the charges, which I can do by drilling in behind the unit here, I can create these charges, and it will do the account substitution to make sure that the charges hit the right property. For example, if I drill into this rent charge, notice that the GL account that this thing applies to is 7040-00. So this is just a generic charge that I'm setting up pointing to a generic account. But because I told it that this particular piece of property, this building, in that third segment is actually the number 10, it will do the proper account substitutions as we see here to make sure that not only are my expenses hitting the correct account because I've defined those under the building expense section, but now my revenues are going to hit the correct account as well. So obviously I can then go in and run a P&L and say, in Management Reporter, show me a P&L where segment 3 equals 10, and I would get a P&L just for this one particular piece of property. We also have the ability, if we drill in behind these charges, to have them recoverable. So if I'm looking for recovery based on sales amounts, Brent mentioned that when talking about retail properties and the break points and so on, we can recover charges based on a sales amount or a percent rent. We have the contribution, which is typically how CAM is calculated. We also have a meter module, so I can recover charges based on a meter reading. I set these charges up with all of the features that I need to manage it properly. I'm going to simply define, make sure the GL account is correct, make sure the revenue amount, the initial amount that I'm charging on my lease is here. How do I want this to be billed? So I can put in my various frequencies. Stepping one step in further, I can now create an escalation. So typically we don't see this used a lot in the residential side, but in the commercial and the retail, it's very common that you're negotiating not just a 1-year lease, but maybe a 5-year, a 10-year, a 20-year, whatever that happens to be. I can create various terms and have steps inside the terms as well for a particular number of months, and I can tell it how I want it to escalate. So what's the escalation frequency? In this case, I've got an annual escalation, and based on this particular term, I can tell it to do a comparison. So a lesser of or greater of a comparison of some of these other elements, or if I leave it at none, it will simply use this particular element. So I can do it by amount, by percent, based on a CPI schedule, or based on some kind of a rate driver like a cost per square foot. So in this case, I've got a simple 5% increase. So if we look down, I can see my initial charge is $1,650. Remember, it was an annual escalation, so 1 year later, I've got my 5% increase. A year after that, it increases again, and so on and so on. What's nice about this table is I'm now giving you the ability to forecast and look into the future. So if you're sitting down doing your forecasting, your long-term budgeting, and thinking, I need to be able to put on this forecast, what is my revenue going to be next month, next quarter, next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years? We can, based on how we build out this schedule, look that far into the future. Another interesting feature, if you're looking at rents that have to be recognized in a straight line fashion, FASB 13 actually touches on this, where you have to recognize an average amount over the life of the lease. In this case, I've got a 10-year term, I've got a 5% escalation, but I've told it here to calculate a straight line amount over the life of the lease. So what it does, it says, my rent is going to start at $1,000. I've got my 5% increase. So if we go down, we can see it jumping to $1,050, and so on and so on. But if I want to do straight line, I need to calculate this average amount. So it looks at here all of the elements of this lease. What is my beginning amount? What is my last amount? How many periods am I looking at? It's $1,257.79 average or straight line amount. So when I invoice the $1,000, we also have to accrue the additional $257.79. So we're going to create the invoice, and this is just an out-of-the-box SOP or sales order processing invoice. So if we look, there's my straight line rent for $1,000. But in addition to that, we're going to create a journal entry, which is going to accrue the additional $257.79. And we drill in here, we can see the journal entry where I'm accruing that additional amount. So I've got additional revenue. I've also got it sitting in an accrued account on my balance sheet to offset that. And as this lease increases, as my rent amounts go up, of course the average stays the same, but the amount that I need to accrue reduces until eventually the amount that I am invoicing is more than the average amount, and I'm basically going to reverse the accrual. So over the life of the lease, using this straight line functionality, I will have invoiced $150,934.92 and recognized the same amount. But if I'm subject to those FASB requirements to recognize my lease revenue in a straight line fashion, that function is already built into the application as well. So I can set up various charges. I can create the leases, as Brent mentioned. Every lease can be negotiated totally differently than the one prior to it or the one after it. Set up the basic elements of the lease, including all of the proper dates. We have the ability here to capture deposits. So if you require your tenants to pay deposits, it integrates, as we can see here, with the cash module, so that when the customer pays the rent, I've got that cash record. My subledger is up to date. My cash subledger is up to date. My general ledger is up to date as well. When he moves out, simply put in the date and the amount that I want to pay them back. I've got two options. I can simply do a cash receipt to hand him his cash back if I'm doing it at a petty cash or something, or I can create a deposit return, which creates a credit memo, which I can then apply against outstanding rent invoices, or if the rent invoices are all up to date, fire it over to accounts payable and pay the lease off, or pay the invoice that way, or cut him a check. So I've got all the elements of the lease put together. All I need to do now is once a month come into my invoice creator, and you can do this at any point in the future that you want. So let's say that lease that we were looking at, I want to run my invoices now, and let's say I'm working on December 31st, so I'm going to run an invoice here for December. I'm going to date it for December the 1st of 2014. I'm going to tell it to pick up any charges as of December 31st, 2014. Now, I don't have to filter this. I can simply leave it alone, and it will pick up all the charges across all the leases in my entire database. For the sake of simplicity, let's just look at that one lease that we were looking at. I will filter it to that lease number 2. Of course, I'm going to give it a batch ID. If I'm using Multi-Entity Manager, I can also tell it here to run the leases across all of my companies, run the invoices. So I'm going to mark them all. When I hit redisplay, it goes out and it finds here's the charges. So I can see very clearly the charges. I can see the charge IDs. I can see the dollar amounts. I can see the dates I'm invoicing for, all of the relevant detail that I need to know. Is my invoicing ready to go? If I want, I can drop this out to a report so I can analyze it first. If I'm happy, I'm going to give it a batch ID, click the process button, and it's going to create SOP or AR documents, your choice which one, and we're ready to go. It doesn't matter if there's 6 lines, 600 lines, 6,000 lines here, the process is exactly the same. Simply fill in the dates, filter it if you need to. If you don't, it will run for all your companies. Redisplay, it shows you what's going to be invoiced. When you're happy, mark them, process them, the invoices are done. It's literally that simple. Build your leases, run your invoices, and you're good to go. Of course, the next thing that we want to do is look at some of the basic reporting. Now, we don't have time to look at all of the reports in property management today, but under the inquiry screen, we have the ability, for example, to look at my buildings or my portfolios, my sites. I can look at what's vacant, what's occupied, when those leases expire. I can run that equipment report. I can check my deposits and so on. If I come down into the revenue side, I can run a lease list. I can look at my various elements here. Again, I can filter it, activate my companies if I'm running Multi-Entity Manager. And we've got the ability to create lease lists. A delinquency report will show me any invoices I've created that are still outstanding. This is in addition, of course, to any reports that you would run through the standard AR or SOP module of Dynamics GP. And then there's lease validation lists as well. We have a rent roll report. We have a straight line report that reports on that straight line functionality. So a lot of various reports in here. We're in the process of building. In fact, working with Wilmerite, we're building some SSRS reports that will eventually be part of the product when they're designed, when completed as well. So a lot of additional functionality. A couple other pieces, if you're in the commercial or the retail space, we do have, as part of our overage module, the ability to do things like the reconciliation by contribution. So for CAM. So for example, if I wanted to run my CAM for that particular building, so let's go in and have a look at the building we were looking at there, and I want to run my CAM reconciliation for the year 2014. When I run this out, it will show me all the detail on the various leases. So in this case, I have lease number 2. Lease number 10 is actually in here twice, lease number 11. Well, why is lease number 10 in here twice? Well, we can see for 112 days, they were leasing 1,000 square feet. For 253 days, they were leasing 1,800 square feet. So their contribution to CAM changed partway through the year. We track that and allow you to create a single report, but showing the detail for both of those periods. Of course, we're looking at our cost per square foot. We can see the amount that is part of their contribution. If you recall, when we looked at the building expense, there was $15,000 in there, split between the interior and the exterior. Of course, that shows the same amount for each of these leases. And it says based on what they should have paid and what they actually paid, is there a shortfall? Do they owe me some extra money? Do I owe them some extra money? Of course, this is just a one-time report that shows here. I have to prove this to my tenant. We have some reports here. I can run a detailed report or a summary report, and that report is going to show the calculation that was done, so I can look at how did we arrive at those numbers. What have you already paid? What should you have paid, which is the numbers here. The difference in this case is you've actually overpaid your CAM by $28.22. So a lot of detailed reporting functionality in there. So that is a very, very high-level overview of property site management. It is a modular system. We can see the various modules right here. So depending upon the type of business you have, the leases that you need to manage. The revenue module is where we spent most of our time today. This is if you are a landlord leasing to one or many tenants. The expense module is for the other side. If you are a tenant and you're leasing space from multiple landlords. We have customers, for example, in the fitness business, in the restaurant business, where the head office leases a number of spots around the country, and they have to pay various landlords. Those two modules are designed to work together if there is some revenue sharing involved as well. We have some functionality for people in the tower business, cell phone towers, communications towers, that kind of thing. The expense allocation module allows you to charge expenses to your tenants outside of CAM. As I'm creating the invoice, the AP voucher to pay my vendor, I can immediately charge that back to my tenants and include that in their periodic invoicing. We have a metering module that does exactly as it says. It allows me to import meter readings where I can put a rate per count and then create charges based on the meter reading. The overage module manages the percent rent for the sales-based type of functionality or the CAM reconciliation. We have a budgeting module. Not a lot of customers using that one, but it does help with some what-if scenarios. And we've recently added a mass one-time import utility. We added this for one customer in particular that was in the senior care business, where they have a lot of temporary or one-time charges. So, for example, grandma's in the home, and when people come to visit her, the extra meals that they want to stay and visit, those meals are one-time charges. She wants to get her hair done, or she needs some physical therapy. Those are charges over and above the rent. This mass one-time import allows us to bring in one or many, even hundreds of charges against multiple leases for all of those various activities that are not standard calendar-based or standard escalation type charges. So again, that's a very, very high-level demo of property management. I'd be more than happy if anybody has any questions, if you want to see something that pertains particularly to your industry, to your business, to your particular situation, be more than happy to do a one-on-one demo. Let me just put some communication information back up here on the screen. Here's my contact information. You can send me an email at neil@binarystream.com. Call my office. There's my extension on the phone as well. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. Of course, go to our website, www.binarystream.com. We have brochures. We have case studies. We have recorded demos if you want to see something in a little more depth. So that said, I do want to do two quick things here. I'm going to thank Brent Marsh once again for being with us today. We really appreciate the insight on how Wilmerite, who is in this business, is using Binary Stream products. And secondly, I'm going to turn it back over to Jake to see if there is any questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Neil, and thanks again, Brent. You did a great job. Really interesting to hear your story. We do have a few questions coming in. Firstly, we have a current customer who's using version 12, who's having challenges with new leases being entered but not generating invoices in the invoice creator.
Okay, so I can't address that specific issue because obviously there's something going on in the background that I'm not aware of, but one of the things that we do have, of course, is our help desk. Anybody who is an existing customer having issues with the software, of course, talk to your Dynamics GP reseller first. They are your first point of contact for any issues with Dynamics GP. They'll determine if it's something that is a binary stream problem. If so, support@binarystream.com is probably your best bet to get answers to your problems. If you also go on to our new customer portal, we do have the opportunity there for there's some FAQs. You can read those FAQs, see if maybe your particular situation has already been addressed. If not, simply submit a ticket from there, and our help desk will get right on it and get back to you.
Awesome, thank you. We've got another question here. How would you handle uneven cash flow for a given lease? Say for 3 months you collect $1,000 and then it jumps to $1,300 for 2 months and then back to $1,000 for the rest of the year.
Okay, so if we're looking at a lease itself, let me pull up the lease. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but you can change that escalation. So if I drill back into the lease we were looking at, and when I drill into the escalation for a particular charge, there is the ability in behind here. I can do it manually. I can simply come in, as long as I have not yet invoiced it. Obviously, I can't change these, but I could come in and I could change right here, simply overwrite the amount to be changed. If there's a number of periods I want to change, I could come into the mass modify and say, from period 8 to period 12, whatever those periods happen to be, put in a certain revenue amount, and when I click the OK button, it will come in and override those. So there's a lot of flexibility here. Obviously, build the escalation first, then put the anomalies in. It's not unusual for that situation to happen where maybe the first month is free, or somewhere along the line you negotiate some kind of because you've done some repairs, the rent's reduced or something. It's very easy to, again, manually override it, use the mass modify to override multiple periods.
Great, thank you. We've got another one here. If PSM or if property management can create invoices, and if you can do a one-time charge.
Absolutely. So creating the invoices, obviously, yes, we can do that. That was the invoice creator that we were looking at here. Now, it's going to create your choice of SOP, or sales order processing. Now, those are the documents, of course, that when we drill into the sales module, we get to see all the line level details. So if you have multiple charges, rent, CAM, whatever it happens to be, you can see each of the individual lines. If you don't care about the line level details, we can also push to a standard AR document, which is simply the one that says this particular customer or tenant owes me X number of dollars. So we can push to either of those. So the answer to that part of it is yes. For one-time charges, we have two ways that we can do this. If I go into the property management module, as part of the core module under the revenue utilities, we have a one-time charge. Now, this is to simply do a single charge to a single lease. I'm simply going to fill in the details, pick my tenant, the lease, the unit, pick the charge ID, so maybe it's a miscellaneous charge. It will populate the charge amount, put in the dates that I want that charge to be billed to the tenant, put in the dollar amount. When I click the process button, it will push it automatically to that lease. Again, one charge to one lease. If you have many that you want to bring in, for example, I mentioned the seniors home where they have, maybe there's 500 residents. If they each have one person that stays for lunch and they each go for physical therapy or something once a month, that's 1,000 charges. I don't want to enter that each of those 1,000 charges one at a time. We can use this mass one-time charge utility, and it works a couple different ways. We can do it based on a CSV, so basically an Excel template, populate the information there, use the import button to import that file. The other option is if I want to charge everybody in a particular building or across my entire database, for example, let's say I want to charge everybody a miscellaneous charge this month, and I'll just leave the dates here, a miscellaneous charge of $55, whatever it happens to be. All I would have to do is hit redisplay. It will now find every lease in my system. It will add that charge to every single lease. Had I done an import, they could be different charges to different accounts, to different charge IDs, different dollar amounts. It would still import, populate the information here where I can see it. When I'm ready to go, simply mark them all, click the process button here at the top. It will then push those to the billing engine. When I run my invoices, all of these tenants, in this case, will be charged a miscellaneous charge of $50 or whatever the amount happens to be that you're invoicing. So two options again, the one-time utility, one charge to one lease, is part of the core module. If you own property management, you own that. As a separate module, so there's a small, modest charge for that, there is this mass one-time charge import utility.
Beautiful, thanks Neil. Okay, got another one here. How do you handle an overpayment or underpayment towards a specific line item? For example, a tenant overpays CAM but shorts INS.
Okay, so one of the limitations of Dynamics GP is that you can only pay an invoice up to the amount of the dollars on the invoice. Otherwise, it just sits on the account. So if I had a customer, for example, if we go over to the sales module, and I have a customer that wants to pay an invoice. So let's go down to our cash receipts, and let's say that let's say that my tenant wants to make a payment here, and my multi-entity manager is acting up. Let me just turn multi-entity manager off here just for a moment. If the customer wants to make a payment in short pay, the module that Brent was talking about, the apply by line module, allows me to create a charge, or sorry, a cash receipt, and apply it against an invoice in a partial amount. And I could charge it to a particular line item. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my database. It's acting up on me here, so I'll just kind of walk through it. So what ends up happening is, let's say that the invoice is for $4,000, and $2,000 of that is CAM. The customer pays $3,000, says apply it all to CAM. I can't do that any more than I can put $6,000 on a $5,000 invoice. What I could do is apply it to the line item in full, leave the rest of it unapplied on the customer's account, and next month it can go against that. But the apply by line utility would allow me then to apply a charge at the individual line level, but that's all I can do. I simply get to apply the full amount of the payment against the document or the full amount against the line. Anything over and above that will sit on the customer's account.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there notifications for renewal dates?
There's no notifications built into the system. However, the tight integration that we have with the rest of Dynamics GP allows me to create any smart list that I want. So of course, those dates are stored in the database. I've got my start dates and my end dates for all of my terms, all of my leases. I can very easily build a smart list. Of course, everybody in GP 2015 now has if you don't have Smart List Builder, of course, everybody has the Smart List Designer. So I can simply come into Smart List, click on the new, build a Smart List. Here's a couple I've got built in my system that has, for example, my building insurance, and I have some work order functionality showing here. But you could build a Smart List triggered off of that expiration date and then have that create a reminder. I've actually got on my home screen a couple reminders here based on the insurance. So I can set up my insurance, and I've got this one set up, for example, to show me any insurance policies that are going to expire or where the termination date is earlier than the end of the quarter. I could do the same thing for a lease, for the time of the site, various charges and so on, build whatever reminders I want. Once those reminders are built, of course, I can apply business alerts to them as well. That's just out of the box GP functionality.
Okay, perfect. Can you upload and attach lease documents?
Yes, so again, that's core GP functionality. One thing that we do have, we've kind of borrowed the functionality from the rest of GP. If I pull up a lease, you're probably familiar with this OLE container, the OLE containers for object linking and embedding. You notice here, this one actually has an attachment behind it. I can put some notes in, I can come in and I can attach documents. So I've got a couple methods of doing that. I can click the attach, find the document, and it will list them here, and I can list as many documents as I want as part of this. If I have a scanner attached to my system, I can even scan the document directly from here as well. Lay it on the scanner, click the scan button, it'll import it in and show it right here. So you'll see that functionality all through the entire GP system. We've borrowed some of that functionality and included it in property management as well.
Awesome. Okay. Is there training available for new users?
Yes, so our professional services team is certainly available to do that. Again, typically what you would do is work through your GP reseller. I mean, they're really your point of contact for anything related to Dynamics GP. We work with about 300 different resellers across all of our product line globally. There's a really good chance that your Dynamics GP reseller knows and uses our product. And if so, they would be the ones that you would talk to first about training. However, if they don't know the product, maybe they've never implemented it, or maybe you're their first customer, we're available to help them as well. We have a professional services team who is available to help. We can do all the work. We can just do a little bit of hand-holding, just do some guidance. We can train you to kind of a train-the-trainer kind of thing where you can train your own people. Whatever makes sense for your business, we've got the team working alongside your VAR to make that happen.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all the questions that we have. If you have any more questions, please feel free to shoot Neil an email, neil@binarystream.com, or myself, jake@binarystream.com. And thanks again for joining us. Neil, if you have anything to add?
No, that's it again. Just once again, I'd like to just thank Brent for joining us today and providing a little bit of insight on an actual customer using our products.